friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's I Heart Pandas add-on, Yappy Birthday, Elfie Selfie, Party Animal, and Car Critters Christmas add-on. So I've stamped the images I'll be using on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I am starting with my pandas, and all I'm going to do is add a little bit of shading to the white parts of their body, give it a little bit of a creamy cast using E40 and E41, and I am just shading them depending on the direction that they are facing and adding a little bit of shadow to the outer edges and leaving the white part of the cardstock as the highlight. So I start by adding in a little bit of that E41 right along the outside edges, and then I'm going to take that E40 and just feather that into the white, and then I'll just leave that to dry, and it'll just create a nice creamy kind of look, which is what I'm going for. I absolutely love these pandas. This is actually my third card using them. I've done a Christmas card, a Valentine card, and today we're going to be making a birthday card, and they are just so great for a quick card. So if you find yourself in need of a card on the rush and you don't have a lot of time, this is a great stamp set or a couple of stamp sets to pull out because they're so quick and easy to color. So I did add a little bit of shading using the E40 to the polka dot party hat and also to the gift on the top of the stack. And now I'm going to switch to some pinks. I'm using R00, R21, and R22, and I'm going to give these pandas some rosy cheeks. I always do this to all of my critters. I just think it makes them look extra cheerful and fun. But it's definitely an option. You don't have to add it. It does add an extra little bit of color to them though, since they are quite simple with just the black and white. So I added the R22 in the center on the cheek area, blended out the edges with the R21, and then softened that even further with the R00. And I will continue to use these pink tones for a few of the accessory images as well, just to tie that color palette in together. So I'm going to do one of the balloons in the balloon cluster that is from the Yappy Birthday stamp set, and then also the frosting on the cake, which is from Elfie Selfie. And I'm just adding that shading wherever I think that the darkest part would be, and leaving the highlight in the areas that would reflect the most light. Then I'm going to add it to some of the party hats. For the polka dot one, I just went straight with the R22. Any little areas like the streamers that are on top, I'll just use that R22. But for this striped hat, I did add in all three shades. I'll do the mouthpiece of the party horn in pink, and I'll also do the ribbon on the top gift and the wrapping paper on the bottom gift and the little flag on the solid party hat. So just quickly coloring those images in, and then we're going to switch up to a new combo. I'll do some of those confetti pieces as well. Those are also from Yappy Birthday. And then I'm going to darken this up to a red. I'm going to keep that R22 and add in R24 and R29. I did another balloon, and then I did the ribbon on the bottom gift. I meant to color the wrapping paper of the middle gift, but I accidentally did the ribbon on that one as well, but no big deal. It's all good. And I'm also going to do some more stripes and dots and streamers on some of these party hats. I'll also do the party hat that has the little flag on top, solid red, and a couple more of the little confetti bits as well. So once I have that R29 laid in, I'll start to blend out with the R24, just dragging that darkest color into the mid-tone. And then I will come in with the lightest shade, which is going to be the R22. And again, just go right over the edge of the previous shade and pull it into the next one so that we get a nice smooth blend and everything looks really soft and lovely. Then I'm going to switch to some greens. I'm using G00, G02, and G03. And I'm going to do most of the rest of my accessories with this. So starting with that G03, I'm going to do the balloon, the remains, and also the wrapping paper on the center gift. I'll do the cake and the party horn and some dots and stripes on the party hats, and also color in that last solid party hat green. Then I'll blend out with the G02. And where that is going to start to really soften up is when I add in that G00. That's going to make a huge difference. There's actually quite a bit of difference between that G00 and the G02. So on the balloon, it did push it back a little bit more than I liked. So I will go back and fix that in just a second. But for these smaller images, they blended quite nicely and I didn't have to do any extra work on those. But for that balloon, I'm just going to go back and do another little bit of that G02 and make sure I'm kind of feathering up as I go, and then just go over that again with the G00. I'll finish off that center gift. And then I noticed that the gift on top didn't look like it had been colored, so I just went back and grabbed the E41 again and added a little extra shading to that. I also did the lights on top of the candles and added a little bit more shading to the hat to make sure that that was visible. And then I just wanted to darken up the green combo slightly, so I added in the G07 for my candles and the last few little dots and streamers on the party hats. And I'll also use that on the bamboo that one little panda is holding, and I'll blend that out with the G03 and the G02, and then I'll trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I'm starting with a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock, and I want to do some stenciling on this, and so I wanted to use my waffle flower grip mat, but I keep mine in my MISTI for stamping, which works great. So I just decided to do my stenciling in my MISTI since that's where my grip mat is. That way I didn't have to pull it out. So I am using the new bamboo stencils. This is a 3-layer stencil. So I'm using the base part with the bamboo stalks, and I am adding on some cracked pistachio Distress Oxide ink. And I'm purposely not pressing too hard yet. I just wanted to have a little bit of a softer look for the bamboo stalks. And then I'll just go back in a few places and add a bit of extra ink. And then I can peel off that stencil. And man, that grip mat really works good. I had a hard time kind of getting my fingernail under the edge so that I could lift that stencil, but eventually I did. And there you can kind of see that softer background, which I really, really like. Then I'm going to move on to step 2, and it took me a minute to get this lined up correctly. And eventually I realized that I had actually put the first layer of my stencil down upside down. It's not a big deal. It works either way, but it just made it a little bit trickier to line up part 2 because I had to flip it upside down as well so that it would line up in the little gaps where the kind of knuckles are between the bamboo stalks. And then I'm going to use some Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink for those. And again, I'm not pressing super hard. I wanted this to be a softer look, even though it is a dark ink. And I am just adding that all over into the little areas that this second part of the stencil leaves behind. And once I am done with that, I will peel that stencil up again. Man, this really holds your stencils down well. I'm so pleased with how it works. But there you can see how that fills in. And then the third part of the stencil was really easy to line up because by now I figured out that everything just had to go upside down. And I am going to start with that same Lucky Clover ink and just add that for the leaves. I'm not worried about the ones down at the bottom because those aren't going to show on the final card. And then I am going to bring in just a touch of pine needles to add a little bit of shading to some of these leaves. It's an extra step that you don't have to do, but I just wanted to have a little extra dimension on those so it would kind of match with the level of Copic coloring. So I added a little bit of that, and then I went back to my Lucky Clover ink blending tool and just smoothed that all out. And then I can peel off the final layer of that stencil. And I decided that I wanted to distress this just a little bit and give it a bit more interest. So I'm going to take the lightest and darkest inks and press those onto an acrylic block. So it's cracked pistachio and pine needles. And I'm going to mix that up with a bit of water and tap that all over the background so that we just have some speckle detail kind of between in all of those white gaps between the bamboo. And I thought that just filled in everything nicely and just gave it a bit more interest, like I said. So I'm going to do that until I like the look of it, and then I will peel off this background piece and set that aside to dry. Since I already have my Misty out, I'm going to go ahead and work on my sentiment next. I'm popping a piece of Noble Fir cardstock into the Misty and treating that with my Rabbit Hole Designs powder tool. And then I am going to stamp my sentiment in Versamark ink, just a clear sticky ink that works great for embossing because the powder sticks well to it. And I am selectively masking off part of my sentiment. So it says, "Have a Panda-stic birthday." And I am masking off the word panda, and I am going to replace that, stamp it once again, and just press gently so that I don't squish that stamp down too much, so it'll still be nice and legible. And then I will coat that in some Lawn Fawn white embossing powder. Make sure that that is well coated and tap off any excess from the back. And then I will take a fluffy brush, clean brush, and just wipe off any excess that is around that sentiment so that I get a nice clean look once I heat set this. So I'm going to start my heat gun off to the side and let that go for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then I'll bring it to the cardstock. And I like to go both to the back and the front. It minimizes some of the warping and also prevents you from scorching your embossing powder so it stays nice and bright white. And then I'll set that aside and pop my card base in my Misty. I'm using Sage Leaf cardstock and stamping in Noble Fir ink. And I am going to use the other panda image that did not make it to the front of my card, which is this cute little panda couple, a couple of short stalks of bamboo, and the sentiment that says, "Wishing you a bambootiful day," which I thought was really, really sweet. I'm going to ink that up a couple of times to make sure that I have a good impression, especially since those images are solid in the leg and arm area. And then I did end up stamping the legs a couple of extra times just to make sure that everything was filled in. Then I'll set that aside and trim out some Lawn Fawn speckled eggshell cardstock with the 4-square backdrop portrait. And I should have used a metal shim for this. I didn't. I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't. So it didn't cut out super cleanly, and normally if that happens, I will just run it through my die cutting machine a second time. But this one is a little bit trickier to line up just because of all the little windows. So I grabbed my Cutter Bee Teflon coated scissors and I just trimmed off any of the excess that didn't cut through cleanly. But I would definitely recommend using a metal shim with this die if you're having issues. It's also, my sandwich is a little bit loose in my Spellbinders Platinum 6. Over time, the plates get a little bit compressed. So I just need to add like a new cardstock shim underneath my bottom plate. But anyway, I also need to trim out the rest of my sentiment, and I'm going to use Oliver's Stitched ABCs and cut those out of some Barn Red, Guava, and Noble Fir cardstock. So I'm going to try to squeeze that little N in that tiny little area where there's still enough room on that noble fir. And then I will do the A and D out of the guava, and then the P and a second A out of the barn red. So I'll just pop all of those pieces out and set those aside. So now that I have all of my bits and pieces together, I am ready to start assembling this card. I've added some Scotch 3M foam tape to the back of the 4-square backdrop portrait, and I am just peeling off those release papers, and then I will line it up over that stenciled bamboo background, just making sure I have that on nice and straight before I press that down into place. And then I will flip that over and add some liquid glue to the back of it and add that to the front of my card base. So just getting that glue going, and then I will just line that up so that the corners match, so that I know that that's on there straight. I always like to pinch the edges and just make sure that that is on there firmly. Next, I'm going to adhere my sentiment, and I trimmed down the heat embossed part of my sentiment with the smallest of the Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment banners. And I did the bottom part so that the flag end was on the right, and the top part so the flag end is on the left. So I just glued down the bottom banner, and then I'm going to arrange the letters for the word panda right above that, and I will glue them down starting with the N so that I can line that up using the center bar of that 4-square backdrop and make sure that that letter is on there straight, and then I can work my way out from there. So normally I would have done red, pink, green, red, pink, green, but I didn't want to have two A's that were pink, so I ended up switching it and did red, pink, green, pink, red, which I think also looks fine. But that way I didn't have two letters that were die cut out of the same. I'm weird like that. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I like everything to look a little bit different. So yeah, I'm just going to glue those down right above the bottom part of that sentiment, and then the have a part I'm going to glue to the left side of that center crossbar. And now that I have that, I will bring in the rest of my images. And I did end up stamping out and die cutting an extra little image there, and it's a little fork from Party Animal, and I am going to glue that into the hand of this one little panda. This little panda comes with a separate die so that you can cut out his hands if you want to. You don't have to use it. But when I was die cutting everything, I realized that, and I was like, oh, I should give him something to hold on to, and I thought the fork would be perfect to go with his little cake that he's going to have. For this top left corner, I added the balloon cluster, and then I'm going to put the panda that is facing toward the right in front of that. And I just had to tear off a little piece of the foam tape that I had added so that his head would sit flat on top of that balloon cluster. And then I'm going to add the stack of gifts over in the top right, and I'll put the panda that is facing forward and holding onto the little bamboo shoot. Then right on the bottom left, I'm going to add the panda holding the fork, and next to him I'm going to add that birthday cake from Elfie Selfie. So that looks like he's just about to dive in, which I think is super fun. I added some foam tape to the center of that, and then just some liquid glue where it would overlap the panda and the edge of the 4-square backdrop for that little area. And then I have this sleeping panda. He's going to be the final part of the scene because he's tuckered out after all of the festivities, and he has taken a little nap. So I am going to add the party horn down beside him, and just make sure that that's on there kind of straight. And then I will start adding all of these little party hats to these guys as well. I have to use just the tiniest sliver of foam tape so that they are popped up, but not the part that is sitting on top of their heads, so that everything is nice and flat. And I will go in and add a little bead of glue underneath the part that is on their head to hold that down better. I just first wanted to figure out which hat was going to go with which panda. And so I didn't want to, have the wet glue on there and then be pulling them up and changing them around. But I ended up liking the way I had it originally, so I went ahead and just added a tiny bit of glue and adjusted the foam tape on this one because it was a little bit too low, and just added that back on. And I'll just add a touch of glue underneath the other two as well to make sure that they are on there nice and secure. And then all that's left are those little confetti pieces, which are going to go in the bottom right corner to kind of fill in some of that empty space above the sleeping panda. I wish I could have popped those up on foam tape too. I think they would have looked really cute on the same level, but they were just way too small to try to cut down little pieces of foam tape for me anyway. So I'm just adding them on with liquid glue, and I did put one down in front of the panda just to kind of show, the movement of the scene. The rest I'm just going to stick down, and I did use my EK Success reverse tweezers to help me out with that. I ended up with two that were the same size next to each other, or same shape I mean, and then I ended up with two that were the same color next to each other. So I did do a little bit of rearranging with a few of these because I don't like to have the same shape or same color right next to each other. So I did some adjusting, but it was thankfully not dry, so that was easy enough to do. And then to finish off this card, of course, it's going to need a little bit of sparkle. So I'm going to bring in some Stardust Stickles. I recently just got a brand new bottle, if you saw my haul video. So I'm so happy that it is flowing nicely once again, because the other bottles that I had were really low and I had to squeeze them so hard, and I was so afraid that it would just like shoot across my card. But anyway, I avoided disaster thankfully, but I'm so glad to have a new one. So I just added that to the party hats and the flames on the candles, the ribbons, and the balloons. And that is going to finish this one up. So I will lift that up so you can see all of the detail and give you another peek at the inside. I'm really pleased with how this one turned out. I had so much fun playing with these pandas again, so I really hope that you enjoyed it too. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted when I post new videos. The products I use will all be listed and linked in the description bar below if you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And if you want to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought that you would also enjoy. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.